e14p01.
By Laporte.
e14p01.
Jelly.
Guess where they have it.
Hello, yes, we are back. It is Paulette and Mateo, back for another episode. So, in this episode, we're going to talk about some things that might be considered verbs, kind of not, but kind of considered verbs. So, the best way I can think of to relate what these are is, do you remember being in science class as a kid, and you were looking at the chart, that periodic table of elements, and there's all these elements are snuggled in together in one chart, and then there's like this whole little weird group off to the side, and you're like, why are they off to the side? And that's kind of what these are. These are called Chendales. So these are their own special little group. They do not use the regular driver cars that are, they're not going to use those. So, but they're pretty fun. So we excuse their weirdness. And so we're gonna learn about those today. Ready to get this party started?
Yeah.
So these are kind of verbs, kind of not verbs, and they can also be adjectives or adverbs. So they're kind of all over the place.
I guess you say they're just in their own little special group. They're like the cool kids, that group that I wasn't in high school, which is why I'm probably doing this podcast right now. All right, so there's some debate about whether Chendales are verbs or not, but we don't really care about that. We just care about how to use them and how to communicate what's going on around us, right? The job of Chendales is usually to say that the subject, such as you, has a quality, is in a certain state, or has a possession. So let's talk about that with ourselves, or she. The first use, to say that you have a quality, you would use an adjective, such as to say, I'm pretty.
You are pretty.
Thank you. So let's use pona. You would start with she, and then just attach she again to the pronoun. She becomes the driver car, like she pona. Since the she is repeated many times, it's just left off she pona.
Pretty much always, right?
Let's just go with 99.9%.
99.9%.
Yep.
So, for all intents and purposes, we're just going to, you'll see it in the book that it'll say she pona. We're just going to go with she pona because that's how people say it.
Yes, indeed.
So, you can say you're pretty. You can also describe a state you're in. And this is really where it gets fun. Let's use the most popular one in Paraguay. Caigüe. Caigüe translates to literally like listless, but no one uses that word. So like sluggish, or you're lacking in energy. You're just caigüe.
Let's just tone that down to standard English called lazy.
No, because there's another word for lazy, but you're just feeling lazy. Listless. I know you're angry. He's angry at me.
Okay. I'm angry, but only because there's really two meanings. If you're talking about a current state, yes, you're being sluggish, but you can also call somebody caigüe. And that would mean like he's a lazy person.
Okay. Kai is the word for burned, if we break it down. So I think this is kind of like burned out, lazy. It's 100 degrees outside and you don't feel like doing anything. She caigüe hina, you might say. I'm being lazy. Or, you'll hear this just all the time. She caigüe shara. Just a favorite.
Just like, dude, I don't feel like doing anything. She caigüe shara.
Exactamente.
Alright, so let's go through all the beginnings here. They roughly follow the pattern of regular pronouns, but naturally with some curveballs thrown in there, no?
Because it's Guaraní. Gotta have some kind of funkiness going on.
So, first we had she, to say I'm pretty, like she pona. The next is de, like de caigüe. But here comes the nasals, such as pona. The D in the de, N-D-E, doesn't want to hang out with those nasal guys. So, when we want to say you are pretty, we have to go ahead and drop that D and say ne pona.
Gracias.
This pattern will be followed with other pronouns. That de is going to disappear with all nasals.
That D?
That D, exactly. Such as nyande. We are all pretty. Nyande, nyane, pona. But people are just going to say nyane, pona. Another example then being, we are feeling lazy. Nyande kaigwe. So despite that nyande changing forms, the ore form is going to go ahead and stay the same. So if you wanted to say, just us are lazy, you would say ore kaigwe. Now the pe is going to change a bit and become pende, or with nasals, penne. Penne pona. So sometimes, despite the fact that people know it might not be correct, as we do in English all the time, they might say pende pona or de pona.
It's probably not a good idea to correct them in their own language too. Yeah, that won't win you any friends.
Right, like when you said esquina me, no. Esquina fe.
Sadly. Now let's talk about the beginnings for him, her, and them, which I saved for last because they are functified. So when you're using ha'e and ha'e quera, it just gets super weird. The beginning for that is just an I, pronounced E. It kind of looks like the Apple Corporation took over all the Chendales. So ha'e I kaigwe is he is lazy or she is lazy. Karen I pona is Karen is pretty. This gets even more funky when the adjective or the word you're going to put after it begins with a vowel, but we're going to worry about that later. Another thing with Chendales is that you can use these with all the fun cabooses we've already learned. I'm feeling lazy already would be shekaiguema. Like if you've been cleaning all day and then someone wants to do something else, you'd be like, whew, shekaiguema. Or for example, if you're going out tonight and your friend is getting her hair done, you can say, oh, she will be pretty tonight, or she will look good tonight, would be ha'e iponata kopuhare.
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 Right? So
Right.
In Guarani, we always put the stress on the last syllable, except in rare cases.
Yes, Mr. Lebon. I love you. I know.
Come on the Guarani podcast.
Not here in the Guarani podcast. Don't you do that in the Guarani. Okay.
Alright, now let's look at some states of being that we might actually be using. These are fun because people just throw them out in little tidbits, so you're more likely to recognize them sooner and be able to use them easily. Che Caigüe is practically the motto of Paraguay. Another good one is to say, I'm broke, which is Che Sogüe. So how would you say, Liam is broke already? Liam y Soguema. So this is a really important thing to be able to dominate this whole Sogüe aspect when you don't want to go somewhere that costs money. And, you know, it sounds like just a cheap way of getting out of things you don't want to go to, but it's literally more than that. It's almost the nice way of telling somebody, you know, you don't want to go somewhere. Mm-hmm. Like, if somebody says, are you going to go to the football game, and you know that it's a 10 mil entrada, or entrance, you'd say, Che Sogüe. And it's like a nice way of saying, I'm not really feeling up for it. That's how they say it in this culture.
Oh, really? A lot of times I'm just broke. I've been polite without even knowing. Okay, then there's my personal favorite, which is to be hungry. This is vare'a. Shevere'ama is I'm hungry already. Or a lot of times, for example, you'll hear this when you're drinking tereré, because tereré has caffeine in it and it makes you more hungry. So people will be like, you'd be like, you want more tereré? And they're like, no, shevere'ama. Like, I'm hungry already. Because you usually drink tereré before lunch, so they're ready to eat rather than drink more tereré. And sometimes you combine the ma and the hina with this. Shevere'ama hina. I'm hungry already. How would you say, we are all hungry? Nyande vare'a. And what does this mean? Pauli i vare'ata. Pauli is going to be hungry.